Okay, I'll try and show you how to get data from 4 data sets and bring it into your data warehouse on your SQL database through Visual Studio. So I'll begin by creating the 3 data sets, the data set where which one you're going to be using. So the first one will be a text file. So as a text, so I'll come and create a data set for Notepad and bring it data that is for the text file. So I'll just copy something I have here and save it. So it has the loan ID and it has a name. So the ID is for the text file starts with T and the names right on the next column. So I'll save this. I'll save it on a folder in my computer. So I'm going to go to loans. I've created a folder called loans. So I'll call this text file, I'll call it loans.txt and save it. So I'll close that, then I'll go to Excel and create a CSV file. So for the second data set. Same thing, so I'll copy some data I have already on my computer, paste it here. And you notice the loan ID has a CS as a prefix. So this one file, then save. So watch here closely because now this is where the trick is. So for the CSV file, you have to save it. Like for example, let's go to navigate to the folder. Loans, and now this one I'll call it loans CSV, but on here I have to change to make sure it's a CSV. Make sure you don't select CSV UTF, select the CSV comma delimited. This one, the second option, CSV comma delimited, and then save it. So that is saved. I'll close that. So we have CSV and we have the text file. So I need another data set that is going to be an Excel document or Excel data. Alright, so I'll bring in a new Excel. So this one is going to be Excel. So I'll bring the data I have already here. So look, the loan ID starts with EX as for Excel, as the prefix for the loan ID and the names on here. Then I'll come and file and save. Browse where I want to save it into the folder loans and call it loans, but this is EX, Excel, EXE. And make sure the save type here, change it to 97. I'll explain to you why 97, because SQL and Visual Studio does not recognize earlier version or later version. So Excel 97. So Excel, so save that into that folder. Click continue on this one on compatibility checker. And once that is done, close that. Okay, same thing now. Do another one. Excel, so this is the data that we're gonna bring into all the DB source or the database in SQL. So I'll bring that data here and then I'll save it into the folder loans. Okay, let's go to loans, and on here I'll call it loans DBS for database and change the data type here to 97 and save. So now continue on the compatibility checker, then now close that. So on our folder, this is C loans, we have loan CSV DBS with an Excel with an XLS and text file with a TXT. So we need to introduce the data set, the all the DB source, the data for the database into the database. So what I'll do is I'll bring SQL, and on SQL I'll create a database for this purpose. So a new database, I'll call it loans apps, maybe loans app. So then say okay, and on loan apps, so I'll come here onto tables, I'll create a new table. So this table, you have the loan ID and the data type to be VACA 50, and I have the name with VACA 50. Okay, so and then I'll save this, and you ask me the name for the table. I'll call it loan online. So then say okay. So that is my table name and the data type and the name. So I'll refresh here, and so if you go to tables, we have that one table here, loans applications, and if I run select top 1000, that table is empty, nothing is in there. So now watch what we do. We need to introduce data into this table, because this is a table that is going to be the source for the OLEDB source. So you come into the loans here and right click, go to tasks, then import data, and then select next here. So on the data set source, we know we saved it as an Excel. So, and it's a 97. See what I was telling you, 97 2003. Then browse to your loans file where you saved it. This is a loans DBS for database. So I click on that, open, and then next. So it asks me the destination. The destination is a SQL Server client, native client, the last option on here. And then the server name, this server name, you get it from your SQL. So if you click on your SQL right here, it should give you the server name right there. So already I have mine populated anyway, so I wouldn't have to do that. So then the database you want to bring it into is loan apps, which is the one we are trying to put data into, that table, loan app online. Then next, copy data from one of the tables. Yes, next. So now this is where you need to change, because by default they will try to put the database table DB sheets 1. So you need to click here and change here to go to the online, so that it goes into the table that you created. So click on that. It will give us an error because of the data type, but don't worry about that for now. So next. So you see all these warnings, but don't worry about the warnings. Just click next, next, finish. So I have 10 rows imported, so, and I can close this. I refresh my database, and if I run this query again, I should have 10 with the prefix DB. So we already know in our database loans app, in the table loan online, we have 10 records. So now we need this data to be loaded into a warehouse. So we need to create our warehouse. So on the database, right click, new database, call it loan apps data warehouse, click OK, and on the loan apps data warehouse, right click, click on there, expand tables, and you want to create the table, the same table now that is going to have all the data from the 4 data sources. So the first field is loan ID, and we know the data type is VACA 50. Your name, the next one is name. This one is VACA 50, and then so we save this. You ask for the table name, so we call it loans, all loans. Maybe we call it all loans, because now we're gonna combine all the data from the 4 data sources. So all loans. So that table is all loans. So I close that, and if I come here to the loan DW, loan apps DW, I refresh this. We have a table now called all loans. Here it is. So you right click and say select top 1000. That table, you know, it has nothing in there. So yeah, so running that gives us sorry, something is stopped there. So we have loan. We know on loan apps, all loans, we have nothing in there. So now we know our data is all set. We have the loan, the OLEDB source. We have our other sources, the Excel, the text, and the CSV. So now to introduce all these data using the Visual Studio, we're gonna fire up our Visual Studio. So on Visual Studio, wait a minute. So on here, so what I'll do is I'll continue without code, because we need to create a new project. So continue without code. Right here, we're gonna have File, New, Project. So the project is an integration service project. Then click Next. Give it a name. So this will be loan, maybe loan applications. Okay, and then I want to save it. This one I want to save it in a maybe just choose where you want to save it. I'll save mine in SSIS in that folder, but you can navigate here and choose whatever folder you want. So yeah, my one is going there. So then create. So this is the first page that comes up. I close that. So now in our package, it comes with a toolbox on this side and Explorer on this side. On this one, you notice we have a package here. This package does not contain anything. It's a default that comes with when you open the first project. So you need to rename this to whatever you want it to be called. This package is going to be to process loan applications. That's the name I'm going to give it. And you asked me to save, so I'll say no, because I know that my project doesn't have anything. And so while that is highlighted, I'll come and put a data flow to begin my package. So I'll bring a data package there, and okay, give it. So I'll rename my data flow task to say is load loan applications. And so I'll double click on that so that we can introduce the 4 different sources. So my first source, I'll bring in text file. So this is a flat source for text and CSV is flat file source. So I'll bring flat file source, and I'll rename it to say is txt source. And now I can edit that. Double click on it to edit. So create a new connection. Give your connection a name. So I'll call this text connection manager, because we know it's coming from text, so that I can be able to differentiate between them and the others. So then browse, and we go onto the folder where I save them in loans, CU loans. So it's a text file, it's only a text file. Double click on that and make sure this code page, this is important, 1252 ANIS is what you need. If it's different from that, it won't work. So make sure it's 1252 because of the data type. So the next thing you need to do is click on columns. So you see all your data in here, so it's already shown on there. Advanced, it shows your data type here is string, DTSTR. You see why it's important to have that. And then preview. So you have all the data in there that is from the text file. So you say okay, and then you can columns, yes. So it shows this loan ID and name. So you say okay, and now this data we need to bring it into a data warehouse. So it will be an OLEDB destination. So OLEDB destination to mean we bring it to a database. So we connect this from the text file to the database, and then we can configure our database. So our database is we have to create the database connection manager. So we click on new, and then from here we click new. Alright, so I see my computer is a bit slow, but yeah, there we go. So the server name, I know my server name, so you need to find your server name like I showed you earlier, and then I'll come and select the database that I want to put it in. So I know is loan apps DW. This is the data warehouse I want to put it in. So I click on that and I test my connection. So the connection succeeded. So I say okay, and then I click OK, and then from here is just okay. And so from here I want to select the table I want to put my data in. So I select here all loans. So, and I say view existing, it should be empty, there's nothing in there. So the mappings, so I click on mappings, and it maps the loan ID to the loan ID. This is from the text file to the database, so all the fields are the same. So I say okay, and now you see there's no errors in here. If I run this package, we know there's 10 records in the text file. So if I execute this, right, so I should have 10 records go from the text file into the database. So that is a success. 10 records went in the database. So, and to confirm that, I can come to my SQL, and we already knew this was empty. So if I run this query again now here, it should give me 10, and you see the prefix is tx, meaning it's a text file. So that was successful. So we have 10 from that. So let's go back to the Visual Studio, and I'll stop debugging here. And now we need to bring in our second source, which is the CSV. CSV2 is a flat file source. So flat file source, we bring it in here, and we configure this. So to configure this, we need double click on it and come and say new, and this is gonna be a CSV connection manager. So one second. Okay, so we give it a name, CSV connection manager, and we browse to the file. So one thing you need to know is the CSV does not show here. You have to change from down here to say the file type CSV. So CSV, so it comes here. So there we are. I select it, open, and then notice the code page is 1252 ANISI. You have to make sure, otherwise sometimes it will show like 6,000 something. So if it is like 60,000 something, right, this one right here, you have a problem. So make sure it's 1252. Then the next thing is check your columns. So you see all the CS, meaning the CSV, and the names advanced. So the data type is string, and if you preview, you see all your data in there. So you click OK. So you click columns to see the columns on the source to the output columns, and then you say OK. Now the thing is, now to combine these two sources to the OLEDB, we need to bring in a union, or to combine the two sources. So you need to find union all. So I bring my union all, and then what I need to do is bring this down to the union all, and this one to the union all, and then from the union all I need to configure the union all now, since I brought the two sources. So double click on it, and you know, notice it's configured automatically for me, so I don't even need to change anything. So loan ID, everything from union 1 to 2 is all good. So then I can bring this into the database. All right. So already we know in my database I have 10 records, so I'll need to delete this anyway. I need to delete from this table so that we see if it will bring everything together. So right, 10 rows affected. So if I do the select statement, is nothing in that data warehouse. In the data warehouse, that table, nothing in it. So we come back to Visual Studio, and on Visual Studio now I'll run this package, see if I'll get two sources. So run, execute this package, and let's see. Voila. So we have 10 records coming from the text and one from the 10, and they combine in a union, or they come 20 rows into the destination. So we come back to our SQL and I run this query again. You notice we have the CSV and the text file. Now we have 20 records, so that one worked. So we come back here, I'll stop this. Now we need to introduce the third source. The third source will be, let's do the OLEDB from the database. OLEDB source, I'll bring it in here. So I'll configure the source. So this one is, I'll create a new connection for the database. So new. The server name, I already know my server name. The table, I'll need to select the table which I want to select, which is loan apps loan apps is where the source, the data is, not loan apps DW. So loan apps is where I'm getting the data from on the database. I test the connection, that the connection is successful. Then I say okay. Then I say okay on here, and on here, so I select the table. So it's DB loan online. This is the table in the loan app database. So that is the one I preview. It shows me all the ones with the prefix DB to show they're coming from the database. And then I click on columns. So the columns are connecting loan ID, name, okay. And now if I bring this into the union, and then I double click on the union to see if they have mapped correctly. So everything looks to be mapping fine. So I say okay. And now we already know in our database we have all these 20 records. I'll delete this and then select again. See, now there's nothing. So we expect when we run the package we should have 30 records. So what I'll do is I'll run the package again, and there we go, 10 records from each source and 30 records into the database. And I'll come to the database and run the select all statement again, and we have 30, and all of them with a prefix to from the source where they came from, the database, the text, the CSV. So we know our package up to there is running fine. So the tricky now, we are coming to the Excel file. This is where now it gets a little bit tricky. So the Excel source, I'll bring it here. Remember we saved this as a 97. So I'll configure this first. So new connection, we browse where our file is the Excel file, exe, in our loans table folder, open, loan 97 2003. That is very important. And then we need to check here. So sheet 1 is the one that has the data. Okay, we can preview and see everything. The prefix is ex to mean is Excel, and the names, and then the columns on here is mapping loan ID to loan ID, name, okay. And now we can, if we try to bring this one here, let me show you where the problem is. So I double click on this. See, it won't connect. So if I try to map it, it'll give me that error to say that the metadata associated with the output column is a mismatch. So what we need to do is we need to bring in on the union of input 4, which is this one. I'll delete it for now, and we bring a conversion. So our data conversion in here, and now we bring our data from the Excel into the data conversion. So we can right click here and go show advanced editor. So we go on input and output properties, and we want to see the output columns, the data type. So output columns, data type. So if you look here, the data type is Unicode string. This is the data type coming now from the Excel. So, and we know in our database, was in the database here, let me see. In the database, the data type that is coming in here is string. So those two has to be, we have to do the data conversion. So on the data conversion, I'll double click on it and bring the columns. We know they are coming as Unicode string, but I want them to be string. So what I'll do is I'll rename this aliases to a name that makes sense. Maybe this one, let's say this one is from Excel. Okay, and then we change the data type to string. And now this one, we need to change the same to Excel. You can choose whatever you want. So, but for me, for ease of knowing which one is which, I have to name it like that. So string. And then the length, we know the length of the varchar is 50, because you don't have to bring data that is bigger than what the input, or you don't want to bring an input that is larger than the destination. So you have to match the and make sure the code page here is 1252 AN size. So that is very important. So click OK. And now when I bring my data conversion into the union, notice what happens. If I come and select now the new names, I have no errors. I say OK. So I know my 4 sources now are bringing to the union, or I should expect 40 records in the ODB on the database. So I'll come here and delete the files first. and make sure there is nothing, so it's empty, the data warehouse. I come back to the package, and now I execute my package. I should have problem already, so I know what this problem is. So what we'll do is I'll stop this and I'll show you something I forgot to tell you in the beginning. So for Excel, the problem is that it does not land on a 64-bit, so we need to change that by right-clicking on our project, not on the solution but on the project. Right-click, go to properties, and then configuration properties, go to debugging. On debugging, make sure this one, run 64-bit runtime, is false. So that one is supposed to be set on false. Apply. Okay, and now let's try again. Hopefully this time it runs. Okay, bingo, there we go. All the 4 sources have the 10 records from each source coming into the union, all into the database. So we should have 40 records in our destination. So let's check that. So select this, execute, and so DB 1 to 10, text to 20, CSV to 30, and Excel to 40. So 40 records. So we have 40 records on here, and that is what we inputted from the package. So that is how you go about it. So on the next video, I'll explain more going forward on how to introduce your parameters, where you need to check for anything that wasn't right, so to be outputted in a different, but that is on the next video.